rehabilitated, and real entertaining. This is the Carl Jackson Podcast.
All right, welcome to the Carl Jackson Show podcast on this Tuesday. Guys, I'm going to talk to you about Brittney Griner. This is going to be the definitive podcast, the only podcast that you need to listen to, the only podcast that you need to share when it comes to Brittney Griner. This will be it. No need to listen to anyone else. Welcome to the Carl Jackson Show podcast. Be sure to join me on anywhere that I'm found on social media. The Carl Jackson Show. I was temporarily suspended on a couple of places. I'll be double checking on that. But Twitter, Getter, Instagram, all of these places, True Social, you can find me at The Carl Jackson Show. Please subscribe to the podcast, rate and review the podcast. That way we'll be seen. We'll move up on the charts a little bit, expand our territory. We really would like to do that. If you can help us out by rating and reviewing the podcast, subscribe to the podcast. Obviously, that would be great. Subscribe to our Rumble page. Someone just the other day said, Carl, where are you on Rumble? Why aren't you on Rumble? And I'm like, I am on Rumble, The Carl Jackson Show on rumble.com. Also, The Carl Jackson Show on Getter, because someone asked about Getter. I am there, The Carl Jackson Show. Make sure you put the word "the" in front, but The Carl Jackson Show on those social media sites. And also, if you're subscribing to the podcast, The Carl Jackson Show. Guys, today is Terrific Tuesday. Before I get into the Brittney Griner story, Carl, why are you saying that it's Terrific Tuesday? Well, Terrific Tuesday, I think it's Terrific Tuesday because Liz Cheney is going to lose her seat in Congress. She's turned out to be a disgrace. This was a lady that I once, at one time, admired. She had a very conservative voting record, but obviously she wasn't for the people. She is all about herself and just trying to destroy former President Trump. And it isn't going well for her. Thank God. And I think she's going to lose her seat. Obviously, she won't leave office until January. Supposedly, she's going to make a run for the presidency. We'll have to wait and stay tuned for that. But if she does, she's going to bum out. Democrats aren't going to go for Liz Cheney overall. Maybe a few will, but they aren't. She isn't a hardcore leftist, even though she's acting like one with the January 6th Select Committee. So I don't think they're going to go for her. Republicans certainly aren't going to go for her. At least conservative Republicans are not. So it's Terrific Tuesday because she has done a lot of damage to the country. I can't wait to see her fall. Normally, I don't speak like this or act like this, but in this case, this is a woman that absolutely deserves it. She's turned out to be a despicable human being. Now, let me get to this issue of Brittney Griner. Guys, I haven't talked about this story except in passing the entire time that it's been around. I mean, I've made some comments. I've made some of my feelings known. I want to be clear. I want to be emphatic. And I'm going to do something a little differently today. And I'm going to ask you to go ahead and grab a barf bag really quick. Please go grab a barf bag because I'm going to read to you a liberal column on the take, or a liberal columnist take on what's happening with Brittney Griner. And I think it's a story that people are still talking about. I wanted to get away from this story, to be frank with you. I don't like the WNBA, and I'm not joking with you. I forget that the WNBA exists every year until I see a commercial by accident, and I'm like, oh yeah, but literally every single year. Now, the fact that Brittney Griner is jailed in Russia has brought more attention to the WNBA, I think, this year than it's probably gotten in the in its entire existence. But that's just my take. At least that's what I've noticed. But again, I don't watch the WNBA. I don't like watching the WNBA. I know some people are going to be offended by that. I don't care. I'm sorry. I think it's boring to watch a bunch of tall women that can't. It's just me. Women that are playing great, sound, fundamental basketball at a professional level isn't appealing to me. When it's for some reason I like college women's basketball so much better. Maybe it's the rivalries that exist in college. I expect good, sound, fundamental basketball competition there. I love some of the coaches in women's basketball. And so perhaps that was part of it. But when it gets to the WNBA level, I think I watched a couple of games back in the day. And I mean, when they first started, and I just couldn't hack it. And they've had some great female players go through there. Don't get me wrong. It's just not something that I enjoy watching. I don't. So anyway, so I forget that it exists. Now, having said that, that's neither here nor there. But there's been a lot of people that have, particularly on the left, and even some on the right, that have said, listen, this sentence for Brittney Griner is too long. It's crazy. This is Vladimir Putin playing games, and indeed, there's some truth to all of that. But also there's a recognition or a lack of recognition of what's happening. First off, this is a story of Black privilege. Yes, I said it. This is a story of Black privilege when it comes to Brittney Griner. See, a lot of people on the left will say, hey, listen, and as a matter of fact, I'm going to go through a column here shortly that basically makes this case, an argument that Brittney Griner is being treated like a Black woman, but she's being treated like a Black woman in Russia. The reason why Brittney Griner is in prison in Russia is because she happens to be Black and she happens to be a lesbian and yada, 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 yada. All of the left-wing talking points that we always hear, always the victim card, despite the fact that Brittney Griner is a WNBA player that makes $250,000 a year playing right here in the United States of America or thereabouts. And then overseas, I believe she went overseas to play in Russia. And I believe they paid her approximately $1 million a year or annually to play in their league over there or thereabouts. I know the women up there can make more money playing in Russia, so that's why she was traveling. And you'll hear an argument from a liberal columnist that says, well, if the women out here in America get paid as much as the men, oh, silly, 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 silly argument. But the left, they're always predictable. You know exactly where they're going to go. But the reason why Brittney Griner is in prison in Russia is because she committed a crime in Russia. And here's the problem. We expect it. Blacks in America are so blessed. We're so privileged that we can claim victimhood in the United States of America. And then when we go to a place where the American rules don't apply, we say, hey, they better extend those same American laws. You know, the American laws that the left says they completely hate. Hey, you better extend those same American laws. You better extend the same American grace, the same American prestige. You better extend that to the nation overseas. You guys better abide by that, I should say. So Russia, you better abide by treating Brittney Griner like a Black queen, like she's treated in the United States of America. You know, this evil place that hates Black people, that hates Black women, that hates lesbians. You know, this place, she better be treated like she would be treated here, over there, huh? Are you scratching your head? Yes, I am too. This is what the left has done. Brittney Griner has experienced Black privilege in America, and now she and her cohorts, her supporters, expect her to experience Black privilege in another country, and they ain't having it. They ain't having it. This is the story. This is the story that no one wants to talk about. The truth of the matter is, a lot of people have said Brittney Griner has gotten a lot of time. Man, that's an excessive amount of time. That's crazy time. No. Brittney Griner got the time that she deserved for the crime that she committed. That's it. That's it. There's nothing else to that. And why I say is because I will go through some things that'll make you say, okay, there's probably some politics in this, but even still, with the politics, Brittney Griner didn't get anything really out of the ordinary. As a matter of fact, I'll make the case that Brittney Griner, because of her Black privilege, of who she has been in America, is getting somewhat special treatment in Russia, albeit she won't experience that there, or she won't think that she's getting special treatment there when she's in the prison system, or as she is in the prison system. Because I understand their prisons are pretty harsh there. Our prisons here are harsh in the United States of America. But anyway, not like they are in Russia. So first, I hope you grabbed your barf bag. Let's go. All right, so here's a columnist, a lady by the name of Natalie Johnson from MSNBC. And guys, just bear with me. I'm going to read this column in its totality. And for all of you patriots, I want you to get ready to barf. As I do this work for you with my formerly fingerprinted fingertips, working hard to pick up these papers just for you. Here's what the columnist said. And the title is called, Why Brittney Griner's Peril is Felt by All Black Women in America. So let me get this straight, right with the title. Brittney Griner's peril, she's in danger, is felt by all Black women in America. Okay, this by Natalie Johnson. She starts off. When tennis star Serena Williams gave birth to her daughter in 2017, she nearly died because doctors did not believe her when she cried out in pain. As it turns out, Williams, the world's most famous athlete, was suffering from blood clots in her lungs. It would be hours before doctors agreed to do a CAT scan and rushed to break up the clotting before it reached her heart. Despite all of her prestige and achievements, Williams was at the mercy of a medical system that is uniquely fatal for Black women. Let's keep that word mercy in mind. Hopefully, I'll remember that. Gabe, help me to remember that word. Mercy, 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 mercy. The state of powerlessness Black women, including Serena Williams, are relegated to is a phenomenon sociologist and author Tressie McMillan Cotton discusses in her memoir, Thick and Other Essays, quote unquote. It supersedes even the most powerful status cultures in all of neoliberal capitalism, wealth, and fame, Cotton wrote. Now, I got to tell you, there are too many sociologists out there trying to justify their career paths by writing crazy crap like that. But nonetheless, I digress. I return to the column. The same can be said for American basketball player Brittney Griner. So you get it. Let me just make this point real quick before we move on here in this column. Just so you understand, Serena Williams is the only woman or only person perhaps that has ever been in a hospital where the doctors have gotten it wrong, where the doctors have ignored the patient and the patient has persisted and said, hey, wait a minute, there's something wrong with me. I want you to check this out because I feel this. No one else in the medical that has given birth, no woman that has given birth, no one that's ever been in a hospital system has ever complained to a doctor before and have the doctor ignore them because the doctor is like, wait a minute, I'm the doctor, you're the patient, I know better than you. I've operated or I've seen thousands and thousands of patients. Of course, I know better than you, but the patient insists, there is something wrong with me. I want you to check it out. That's happened to no one else except Serena Williams. All right? Let's make that emphatically clear. Just want to be clear. That's what this columnist is saying. Now, the same can be said for American basketball player Brittney Griner, who has been sitting in a Russian prison cell for over 5 months for carrying 0.7 ounces of cannabis oil in her luggage. Cannabis from a vape cartridge, her lawyer said she only brought to Russia by accident. On Thursday, Griner, the two-time Olympic gold medalist and now this was written a couple of weeks ago, mind you, medalist and WNBA champion, pleaded guilty to drug charges, the result of which put her behind bars for up to 10 years. Griner, 31, is certainly a victim of being in the wrong place at the wrong time, the column says. Griner was in prison 1 week before Russia invaded Ukraine and has effectively become Vladimir Putin's political prisoner. Griner, a lesbian, has also found herself in the grip of a government that persecutes LGBTQ people or plus people to undermine democracy. So other countries around the world apparently persecute their own LGBTQ people to undermine democracy. But the conditions that brought her to Russia in the first place, and perhaps what have kept her there for so long, are uniquely American. And they reflect the vulnerability that often comes with being a Black woman. Much like Williams's near-death experience, those conditions override Griner's status as one of the most dominant female basketball players in history. All right, so now she says again, much like Williams's near-death experience, those conditions override Griner's status. Guys, I'm going to show you shortly that because of Griner's status, she's getting better treatment in Russia than I would, than you would, or anyone without her status was. No, her status is not a LeBron James or a Michael Jordan or a Kobe Bryant or anything like that. No WNBA player will never rise to that level of status because they will never be as good. All right, it's as simple as that. Having said that, she's getting far better treatment than the average American citizen will get treated in Russia or anywhere else around the world for that matter if they found themselves involved in some type of criminal prosecution. Now, The article goes on to say the pay gap. Of course, it's the gender pay gap. It's the United States' fault that Brittney Griner is in jail overseas in Russia. It's the gender pay gap, particularly for Black women that exist across the workforce in the U.S. is especially egregious in basketball. And it's what makes traveling overseas such an attractive option for many WNBA and NBA players like Griner. In 2019, half of the WNBA played in Europe and Asia during the league's offseason because they can expect to get paid more than they do at home. The average, okay, so they should be glad that they can travel. This is my take now. They should be glad that they can travel someplace overseas and get paid a buttload of money for dribbling a ball. But no, this columnist doesn't see it that way. The average WNBA salary, around $100,000, is 1.5% of the average NBA salary, which is well over $7 million. Okay, so you look at these numbers and you're like, man, whoa, that is a huge gap. You're talking about an average salary of 100 grand compared to an average salary for women, 100 grand average salary, compared to men in the NBA that make approximately $7 million on average annually. Guys, I just told you, and I was not joking, that I literally forget that the WNBA exists every single year without fail. Without fail. Now, I don't watch, since sports has gone woke, I don't watch sports as much. I turn into sports or tune into sports, or I did, so that I could hear sports, so that I could escape my average everyday life, all right? But once sports went woke and they reminded me of what I had to believe instead of just enjoying the game, I tuned out. I started tuning out. I just can't take it. I go to church to be preached to. I read the Bible. I don't want to be preached to by some ESPN or Fox Sports analyst. Don't want to be preached to by these people. I want them to tell me why I should enjoy sports or this facet of life. I want a balanced approach to life. I don't watch sports to get preached to. And unfortunately, that's what sports has turned into, hence this column that I'm reading right now. Russian teams, including the UMMC, Ekaterinburg, which Griner plays for, I don't know how to pronounce that, sorry, reportedly pay WNBA players more than $1 million annually. In her latest season playing with the Phoenix Mercury, Griner made $221,450. All right, so she gets paid $221,450 to play with the Mercury. She gets paid over $1 million as she travels to Russia to dribble a basketball there. How many of you even get to travel? How many of you can even afford to travel? Can you say American privilege? Can you say Black privilege in America? Over $1.2 million for a female to play basketball. And this chick is complaining because there's some injustice in there somewhere. Some type of injustice. We just got to find it. We'll keep searching here. The NBA's annual revenue are $7.92 billion. Okay? $7.92 billion. That is the annual revenue, I guess, on average for the NBA. $7.92 billion. Now, what is the WA's annual revenue? Of course, since they're arguing that women, or this lady is arguing, there's such a huge pay gap, I guess she's arguing that women should be paid approximately the same as men or thereabouts. Well, the women, the WNBA, they bring in annual revenue of $60 million. $7.92 billion compared to $60 million. They're not even in the same ballpark. They're not even in the same sentence. There's a reason there's a huge pay gap. There's a reason why the WNBA brings in $60 million in annual revenue and the NBA brings in $7.92 billion. I forget about the WNBA every year. That means a lot of other people do too. I'm sorry. It's not exciting to watch a bunch of chicks that can even though they play great fundamental basketball, when I'm watching when I watched the WNBA, a couple of games when they first started the league, it wasn't exciting to see a bunch of empty stands. It wasn't exciting to watch women on the floor do things that at the time, at least, I thought I could do with a summer or maybe 6 months of practice. I don't care how much I practice. I don't care how much I work out. I would never be a LeBron James, never be a Michael Jordan, never be a Kobe Bryant, never be a Shaquille O'Neal. You understand? I would never be a Kevin Durant. Never. Never, never, never. No matter, Steph Curry. No matter how much I worked out, no matter how much I practice. I got too late of a start. Those guys are amazing. They're phenomenal. They do things I'm like, this is unthinkable. This is unimaginable. This is why I would enjoy watching those players. But if I'm watching women, tall women, dribbling a basketball around, playing great fundamental basketball at a professional level, I'm not entertained. And apparently, neither are hundreds of thousands or millions of others. Now, she goes on to say, this columnist does, that economic disparity translates into the coverage or lack thereof. Griner's story has been swirling in the media for months, yet, despite being the most consequential story in American sports, only one reporter showed up to the Mercury game in Los Angeles on Monday for player interviews. Again, this was a couple of weeks ago. She goes on to say, this is one of the players, Mercury guard Sophie Cunningham, told the LA Times, if it were LeBron James or Tom Brady, this would be news that would be in the headlines every day. Every day. With BG, as in Brittney Griner, it is and it's not. It is and it's not. It needs to be a consistent message out there until she's home, quote unquote. Now, part of the problem with Brittney Griner is, first off, who knew who the heck Brittney Griner was outside of the WNBA before Brittney Griner was in prison in Russia? I had never heard of her. And apparently she's one of the best players in the WNBA. Never heard of her. She said, we in women's sports don't get as much coverage. We get 4% of the media. So this gets 4% of the attention it should be getting, quote unquote. Vanessa Nygaard, head coach of the Mercury, added, quote, there's more that can be done, quote unquote. I'm going to argue against that because they're completely wrong. They're completely wrong. These people are completely emotional. They have no clue what they're talking about. And what they're doing is projecting American privilege onto the rest of the world. Instead of being grateful and saying, oh my God, if she were still in America, she would not be treated this way. No, they figure out how to make Brittney Griner a victim for committing a crime in another country. That's exactly what they're doing. And they don't take the time to count their blessings that they're not in Russia, but they can sit here and they can open their mouths and they can complain about the plight of a black woman. But Brittney Griner can't do that there. If Brittney Griner were to speak the way that they speak here, these women speak here, Brittney Griner would probably be serving more time than 9 years there. I'm sorry for all of you that say, oh my God, that's a long period. Yeah, that's a long period of time for us because we're United States citizens. So we look at this and we're like, that's crazy. That's crazy. That's crazy. For Russia, she's in line. She's totally in line with sentencing guidelines. As a matter of fact, she's even a bit under. So we're going to talk about that. But I one of my beefs is, I think Democrats speak out on this nonsense. They have no idea what they're talking about because they just it's all emotion. It's all emotion. They get emotional and they find reasons to justify their emotions. They find reasons to justify their sociology degrees. But this is exactly what's happening. Of course, if it were LeBron James or Tom Brady, you'd hear more about it on the news. Why? Because everybody knows them. It's as simple as that. That's life. That's life. Deal with reality. They would be a much bigger and easier. They talk about this swamp. They want the Biden administration. I can't believe they're serious. I know I'm going to perturb a few people for saying this. The idea The fact that you would even think about swapping, and listen, I don't want Brittney Griner to be there, but she did the crime. She's got to do the time. And to swap her for, what is this guy's name? Victor Bout, the guy that was described as one of the world's most prolific arm dealers, arms that were sold to some of our adversaries that ended up killing American citizens. Are you freaking kidding me? Are you freaking kidding me? We're going to swap a basketball dribbler out for a man that is responsible for killing Americans on the battlefield? Are you, that shit? Whoa. Those thoughts, those words shouldn't even be in the same sentence. That's crazy. And that's not to diminish Brittney Griner's life. But when you're talking about diplomacy, when you're talking about an arms dealer for a basketball player, that is ludicrous when it comes to foreign policy. It's ludicrous. It's juvenile. It proves how childish the left is. They cannot see past their own freaking butts. That makes no sense whatsoever. If we were swapping Brittney Griner out for a Russian player here that got caught selling weed or selling drugs or, participating in prostitution, something like that. Okay, that's what you call an even swap. You don't swap a WNBA player that no one has heard of until she got arrested for a notorious arms dealer that was responsible for killing American soldiers on the battlefield. You have to be 3 years old to buy into that juvenile argument. That is insane. That is insane. And these are the people that think like this are leading our country today. That is freaking insane. The article goes on. We in women's sports. Oh, I'm sorry. I read that part. Broadly speaking, American media struggles to pay attention when anyone other than a white woman disappears. A phenomenon PBS News anchor Gwen Ifill called missing white woman syndrome. Now, I got to tell you this. There's something to this, but there's a reason there's something to this. And no one's going to speak the truth about it, but I'm going to speak the truth about it here. But first, let me read on. When it comes to Black and Indigenous women, our cases are not taken seriously, and no one is looking for us if we were to go missing. Derica Wilson, co-founder and CEO of the Black and Missing Foundation, told the Read Out this in September. You guys may remember Joy Reid talked about this, and I was upset at first. I looked into it, and there's some truth to it. But and then there's some more truth to it that Joy Reid didn't speak about. See, part of the reason why Black women aren't as, remember, I forget the name of the girl who went missing last summer. She and her boyfriend, turns out her boyfriend killed her, and she ended up, he ended up killing himself. I mean, wall-to-wall coverage. It was insane. I got tired of the story. I don't even participate in that nonsense. I don't like delving into stories like that. And I'll tell you why. And I'll get back to this. But let me just take a quick sidebar. The reason why I don't like talking about big stories like that, crime stories, is because they dilute the justice system. You won't find a fair jury anywhere in the world when a crime story is on TV 24/7. It's not going to happen. That destroys our justice system. So I don't like stories like that. I really don't. So I don't get caught up in all the news and crazy attention when it comes to big stories like that. The whole thing with Casey Anthony and all that kind of stuff. Even back then, I recall being on air, and I guarantee you I was the only one, or one of the only ones, but I didn't hear anyone else say it, that Casey Anthony should be found not guilty. Not because I didn't think she didn't do it, but because I understand the rule of law. Listen, I just being blunt with you. You guys know my history. I wasn't like I was some big time criminal or something, but I happen to have a little experience in the courtroom. All right. Happen to have a little experience with attorneys, and based upon what attorneys have to prove, the prosecution against Casey Anthony did not prove it. They did not prove that she murdered her daughter beyond a reasonable doubt, or at least not intentionally. I can't even recall the specifics of the case, but I watched I listened to the case from get to go. Literally listened to it all day, every day on radio. Even while I was at work, I would have my earphones on at the time, listening to the case. I was that intrigued. I followed every single bit of it. And not one time did I feel like the prosecution made their case. And I sat there thinking this girl is guilty of sin, but she shouldn't be found guilty because they didn't make the case. Whereas a bunch of people were emoting, oh my God, how could she get away with it? That's our system. That's our system. Now, Brittney Griner finds herself in another system. And the reason why there's so many, there's white women where people seem to pay more attention to white women as opposed to black women. There is an issue here. And let's just be truthful about it. Black people, we kill ourselves like crazy. We kill each other, like crazy. We don't like to be snitches. And let's just be real. Let's just be real. We don't like to be snitches in the hood. We don't like to admit that there's a criminal problem in the hood. So you know what we avoid doing? You know what these sociologists, these freaking reporters that happen to be black avoid doing? They avoid talking about crime in black and urban communities. You talk about crime in Chicago. If you're a conservative, you talk about crime in LA. You talk about crime in New York City. You talk about crime in parts of New Jersey. You're some racist. You're some bigot. You're all of this kind of. You're all of this kind of stuff for wanting to help black people. You had Gianno Caldwell, a Fox News contributor whose brother was murdered. I don't see Joy Reid going to interview him. That's why these fake behind black liberals that complain about this stuff are the very ones when crime is rampant in black communities won't say jack squat. And they sit here and pretend like the media doesn't want to cover these stories. Well, if you don't cover them, who the hell is going to cover them? Joy Reid, Natalie Johnson, and whomever the hell else is complaining? You should be the first ones to cover it. You should be the first ones to admit, you know what? Just being real, we got a problem with crime within the black community. But because I want to be down with the brothers and sisters, I'm not going to tell the truth. Despicable. Griner has grown increasingly frustrated that the U.S. hasn't done more to bring her wife home. Brittney Griner's wife. Sure, I'm sorry. Let me go back because I messed up here. It says, when it comes to black and indigenous women, our cases are not taken seriously and no one is looking for us if we're going missing. All right, so I already explained that. This is Jerica Wilson, co-founder and CEO of the Black and Missing Foundation, when she told the Readout this in last September. In Griner's case, the State Department determined in May that she is being wrongfully detained and the White House insists Griner is a priority, but Griner's wife, I don't like saying wife. I don't believe in that. I'm just being real. All right. So Griner's partner, Sherelle Griner, has grown increasingly frustrated that the U.S. hasn't done more to bring her wife home, to bring her partner home. She says, I'm frustrated that 140 days have passed since she says, wife has been able to speak to me, to our family, and our friends. Griner said at a rally for her spouse in Los Angeles on Monday, I'm frustrated that my wife is not going to get justice, quote unquote. See, this is another thing. We're so blessed in America as blacks. We're so blessed in America as blacks. We don't even know what justice is anymore. You understand that sometimes justice means you go to jail. You understand that sometimes justice means, wait a minute, guilty of all charges. Not guilty. Sometimes that's justice too. See, justice swings both ways. But when it comes to justice, unfortunately, black leftists think we're always innocent and there's always someone out hunting us. And what's amazing to me, it's oftentimes the most prosperous, the most successful blacks that argue this nonsense. God have mercy on their souls. I believe there's so many black liberals, so many black Democrats that have gained such success in America. And all they do is victimize the rest of their race. And I think they're going to have to pay account to God for that. I really do. She says, I'm frustrated again that 140 days has passed since my wife has been able, I'm just reading the quotes. I hate saying wife, but I'm going to read the quotes. Has been able to speak to me, to our family and our friends. Griner said at a rally that her wife in Los Angeles on Monday, I'm frustrated to her wife. I'm frustrated that my wife is not going to get justice. The U.S. Embassy in Moscow arranged a call for the couple on their 4th anniversary in June, but despite 11 attempts to reach Sherelle, no one was in the State Department office to make the connection because it was the weekend. She says, Sherelle does, I have zero trust in my government. This is what Sherelle Griner told the AP at the time. If I can trust you to catch a Saturday call outside of business hours, how can I trust you to actually be negotiating on my wife's behalf to come home? It seems only fitting that the most fervent advocates, and that was a quote and close quote, all right, after home. It seems only fitting that most fervent advocates for Griner's return are other Black women, this columnist says, 1,200 to be exact. On Tuesday, a group of Black women, civil rights, and this was a couple of weeks ago, business, media, and sports penned a letter to the White House admonishing the Biden administration for not taking swifter action to negotiate Griner's release. Joy Reid, Tiffany Cross, both MSNBC hosts, and Amber Ruffin, a Peacock host, also signed the letter. We are concerned that the rhetoric does not appear to align with the actions taken to date, the women wrote. We urge you to make a deal to get Brittney back home swiftly and safely. America cannot fail Brittney Griner. They wrote, perhaps in some ways we already have. All right, so I didn't intend to go as long with that, but it was important that we go through that because I want you to understand how the left thinks. I want you to understand what the left thinks, and I don't think anyone has done. I don't believe anyone has been this in depth when it comes to the Brittney Griner case. But I'm just tired of hearing about it. I'll be honest with you. I'm just being blunt. I'm just being honest. I'm tired of hearing about it. And so I want this to be the definitive podcast on Brittney Griner. It doesn't mean that I don't, here's this word, I don't wish mercy for Brittney Griner, but it would be mercy that the Russian government would have to extend. And I'll explain why. Let me get to the truth. Brittney Griner should be asking for mercy. Brittney Griner's spouse should be asking for mercy, not justice. Mercy, not justice. Brittney Griner admitted that she committed a crime in Russia. Mercy, not justice. Unfortunately, the Black community in America has become so privileged that we feel like our privilege, our entitlement extends outside of the U.S. So instead of being thankful, regardless of what you feel about America's past, regardless of how you feel about how Blacks came to be a part of this American experience, there is no other country that blesses Black citizens like the United States has. So much so that we can become successful by using a system that we claim is systemically racist and bash that system, and then have the audacity when we don't experience the blessings of that system to come back and rag on another country for not using such a system. You see how I don't think I can even repeat that. You see how twisted the left's thinking is? Now, here's the truth. This is what Brittney Griner is really experiencing. Hat tip to the Federalist, Simon Hankinson. I had just read you a column from MSNBC. And I'm sorry you have to throw up. Make sure you clean up your mouth, all that kind of good stuff. Get ready for the truth now. So here's the truth. Brittney Griner's prolonged detention isn't racism, but the limits of American diplomacy. These are the facts. Let me read part of this to you. There have been and will be dozens of Brittney Griners, all right? As a consular officer overseas, I met dozens of Brittney Griners, American citizens from all walks of life, who find themselves on the wrong end of a foreign legal system far from home. Despite what Phoenix Mercury coach Vanessa Nygaard might claim, Griner's continued detention in Russia has nothing to do with the lack of U.S. government interest in bringing her home. It makes no difference that she's a woman, that she's black, or that she's gay, even that she's one of the few WNBA players who can dunk. It also doesn't matter for whom she voted. I would beg to differ, but on another end, the reason she's getting any attention is because she's black, she's gay, and she happens to be a woman. So she's getting attention from Biden because Biden is hemorrhaging black voters and Latino voters. So he wants to kowtow to Brittney Griner. The fact of the matter is, the columnist says, there are limits to what American diplomacy can do for U.S. citizens who travel to foreign countries and run afoul of their laws. Americans arrested abroad usually call the consular's office first. This is what happens. So an average American, if you're arrested in another country, the first thing you do is call the American consulate office there. Their expectations, talking about the American citizens, tend to be out of line with what our diplomats are allowed or supposed to do to help them. In other words, Americans get in trouble in other countries with other laws, and they expect to be treated like American citizens. So if you're Brittney Griner, you expect to be treated well because you belong to a country that you claim or you have claimed in the past is harsh or systemically racist towards blacks. You see? There's a foreign affairs manual. There's a foreign affairs operation manual. So the rules governing diplomatic intervention are spelled out in the Foreign Affairs Manual. It's also known as FAM, F-A-M. This is the operational Bible for U.S. consular offices, and more than 400 posts from all around the world. Albania to Zambia, he says. According to FAM, consular officers should visit the arrested American citizen as soon as possible. That is the first step after first learning of the arrest. Now, let's talk to you about the hard truths of what happens when you're arrested as an American citizen. If you're an American citizen right now listening to this podcast and you intend to travel overseas, if you intend to travel to another country, even if it's not overseas, if it's in Northern America, Mexico, wherever it may be on your best behavior. Shut your pie hole. Don't complain about anything and be on your best behavior so you make it back to the United States. That's just that's just a word of advice. Actually, this gentleman says the same. But when an American citizen calls the consular's office, the consular gets to that American citizen that's in prison or in jail as soon as possible. They try to get there almost immediately, but they get there as quickly as they can. Why? To start delivering facts and the hard truths. You're no longer in America. The article goes on to say, that visit to deliver the hard truth. You're not in Kansas anymore. Quote, give the arrestee a realistic and positive understanding of your interest in and responsibility for a U.S. citizen or national in this situation. So that's what a consular would do. Officers are told and, quote, make clear to the prisoner that the judicial system and personal rights he or she enjoyed in the United States do not apply abroad. So this is what Brittney Griner and her partner still don't seem to understand. Although I got a feeling Brittney Griner will be getting the message pretty quickly. Now, the FAM advises that, and again, FAM stands for the Foreign Affairs Manual, advises that, quote, it is only fair to curb the prisoner's expectations that consular assistance will result in extraordinary intervention or miraculous remedies. That ain't going to happen, all right? It's just not going to happen. The consular is there to give them comfort and a dose of reality when an American citizen gets arrested abroad. Now, here's what the embassy officers do, just in case you're wondering. So they will visit you shortly. If you're arrested in a different country, they will visit you shortly after being informed of your arrest. And then, listen to this, every few months during your trial. Did you hear that? What's missing there? American privilege. You see, if Brittney Griner were in the American system, she would be able to bail out. And I know there's a lot of people arguing now, and I've read some libertarians that I respect. Hey, listen, if Brittney Griner were here, and she should be thankful that she's in Russia. If she were here, black woman caught with this stuff, if she were brought up on federal charges, she'd probably be getting 15, 20 years in prison. Maybe that's true, but there's a lot of fallacy to that argument too, because a lot of times what these people that are pro drugs don't mention are the fact that people oftentimes that get these drug charges and save times are copping a plea, meaning they had worse sentences where they could have served more time, or they had points built up. If you build up points in the criminal justice system, the more points you have, the more time you're going to serve, the less likely it is that you're going to get probation or paroled at a shorter period of time. So that's some of the true realities that often aren't told, even from the libertarians. Drives me nuts. They always seem to leave out those convenient parts. So again, they will visit you shortly, the consular will, from the embassy, shortly after being informed of your arrest, and then every few months during your trial. So expect to stay your behind in jail if you go overseas and commit a crime. I don't care how small it is. Don't expect to get bailed out. Don't expect no cash, no bail. Regular bail, let alone no cash, no bail. They will try to prevent you from being abused in custody. So the consular is going to try to prevent the guards there from beating your behind or other prisoners. They will help you find a lawyer, but at your expense. You're going to pay for it. And they will monitor the progress of your case so that the host government knows Uncle Sam is watching. But here's the kicker. In many countries, this is an incentive for them to carry out a fair process. If they know Uncle Sam is watching, who knows? Maybe they get aid. Maybe they don't want to piss off the United States. You know where this isn't the case and hasn't been the case? This is from a man that was a consular for 25 years. That hasn't been the case in Russia. That hasn't been the case in North Korea, nor has it been the case in Yemen. 25 years, this columnist visited or helped Americans who committed all types of crimes, from drug crimes to theft to assault. Here are some of the points that he would make. And this is the harsh reality. This is why I say, Brittney Griner, you did the crime, you got to do the time. Now, if Russia decides to have mercy on you, that's what I would be praying for. And I do hope and pray that Russia has mercy on Brittney Griner. Should we swap her out for an arms dealer? No. That is stupid. That is juvenile. And I don't care how emotional you get. We should not swap Brittney Griner out, a WNBA player, for a guy that has committed mass carnage across the world. That's just stupid. That's infantile. I'm sorry. You have to be a 3-year-old to argue that point. But as I say, liberals don't grow up. So here's what American travelers have to keep in mind. This according to the columnist, this according to the gentleman, Simon Hankinson, who was a counselor for 25 years. 25 years and saw everything under the sun, all different ethnicities, so on, etc. He said American travelers must keep in mind their country, their rules. Remember, it's their country, their rules. In Thailand, for example, Americans can expect I was surprised to hear this, long jail sentences under harsh conditions, heavy fines, or even execution for possessing, using, or trafficking in illegal drugs. So Brittney Griner, thank God she was not in Thailand. Things could have been even worse. Visitors there should respect religious mores and never insult the king. When in doubt, err on the side of caution. And this is regardless of where you travel abroad, outside of America's border. One American was even arrested for posting a bad review of a Thai hotel. Now, here's Dubai. A couple of examples, Dubai and Singapore. In Dubai last year, a group of foreign models got 6 months in jail for posting nude photos, on a hotel balcony. In Singapore, right? The American high schooler, you guys might remember this in the 90s, Michael Fay, was sentenced to 6 strokes of a cane for vandalizing cars. And I mean, you go back and look at some of the film. I can't remember if they filmed him, but I saw others getting spanked with those things. That is brutal. Second, he says, if you are at risk of extradition or worse by a foreign country, Think before going somewhere they might be able to get you. After all, some rulers have long arms. We've seen Russian exiles poisoned in Britain. We've seen Rwandans opposed to the government or connected with the genocide that have died in mysterious circumstances, he says, in various countries. Saudi journalist Jamal Khashoggi, you guys remember that? When he was murdered inside of the Saudi consulate in Turkey in 2018. Was that crazy or what? Third, if you travel overseas to fight for another country, in other words, if you travel as a mercenary, don't expect any help from the American government, right? So missing American veteran Grady Karpasi may have been killed by Russians while he was with Ukrainian forces a few months ago. This, according to the Washington Post. His family, quote, accused the Biden administration of inaction. I would have accused the Biden administration of the same thing until I read this, but inaction on his behalf. But in truth, the columnist says there's little the U.S. can do to aid a private citizen acting as a mercenary or volunteer in a war between foreign powers because they didn't give them the green light to go there. And then he talks about due process and the Geneva Convention. He says, the Geneva Convention extends prisoner of war status to volunteers in certain conditions, but the Russians have made it clear that they will not give those protections to Americans fighting in Ukraine. Meanwhile, Ukrainian forces are also prosecuting Russian soldiers for war crimes in real time. So due process is a rare thing in wartime. Fair process is rare as well. So this is something you have to keep in mind. Griner, because of her status, has gotten treatment well above the consular level. Griner is privileged. Griner is privileged. Understand this. Brittney Griner is being treated with privilege in Russia because of her status. It's the exact opposite of what some commentators have been saying. At the time of her arrest, this columnist says, Griner was in Russia playing her 7th season with the Russian women's team, UMMC. I can't pronounce it again. But we made the case that she got paid more than likely over $1 million annual salary to dribble a basketball in Russia. She has gone well above the consular level. She got to write to the president of the United States. In other words, other prisoners don't get that privilege. They don't get that privilege. You heard she got to speak to her partner on their anniversary. Other Americans, regular citizens, don't get that privilege. Over a month ago now, VP Harris hinted that work was being done behind the scenes, perhaps hinting that Bill Richardson would be negotiating with Russia on Griner's behalf. I believe that's taken place. Harris implied Griner was being unlawfully detained. And now, if that's the case, there are a certain set of rules that applies to her. There's different set of rules for the fam that deals with wrongful arrest, quote unquote. But those reports or that information is for government eyes only. So the consular can't talk about it, or perhaps doesn't get to see a lot of that. This much he can say. While it contains some additional diplomatic tools, it has no magic bullets. Okay, so he does get to see it, but he says it has no magic bullets. So even if there's a quote unquote wrongful arrest, it doesn't mean that things will go great. The State Department has an office that deals with Americans that are, quote, wrongfully arrested, totally separate. But here's the problem, he says. Griner pled guilty. Griner pled guilty to the charge of bringing in, even though albeit minuscule, amount of hash oil inside of a vape cartridge, and has seemingly been treated in accordance with Russian law. Harsh though it may seem to us as United States citizens, she hasn't been treated differently. She hasn't been treated worse because she's black or, gay, or a female. She hasn't. The judges decide the vast majority of cases, except the most serious ones there. Unfortunately for Griner, she picked the wrong time in the wrong place. I mean, she was arrested, what was it, a week before the Russia and Ukraine war? So yeah, that did make it political fodder, if you will, but she still hasn't been treated any differently than a normal American citizen would, right? So the hard truth is that Americans overseas are subjected to foreign laws. It's as simple as that. Brittney Griner is being subjected to foreign laws. In the case of Michael Fay, the guy that got the caning in Thailand, You had Bill Clinton intervene, saying it was a wrongful, trying to make sure he didn't get the sentence of the caning at all. And what Bill Clinton was able to do as the president of the United States is make sure he got 2 fewer lashings. So he was supposed to get 6, he got 4. And those lashes, from what I understand, are powerful enough to freaking put you in a hospital for a little bit. So instead of getting 6, he got 4. That's as much as Bill Clinton was allowed to intervene. And it became a huge story. I remember it. I can't believe it was that long ago. Here's the conclusion. For most Americans, especially those with no fame or connection, there's no way to completely avoid the risk of being arrested overseas, sometimes on spurious charges, made-up charges. Still, the more you can follow the letter of a foreign country's law, particularly with regard to drugs and public behavior, the safer you'll be. So Brittney Griner isn't being treated differently because she's black, female, and lesbian. That is not the case. She's being treated as if she's a privileged, or she's not being treated unjustly. All right. She is privileged. She is privileged there. It's sad to say, but this is a harsh reality. Or I should say, she's been treated better than most foreign. If another American citizen was there, even a white female, all right, because the left will argue about this. It's always about race to them. Even a white female, average citizen, American, would not get the treatment that Brittney Griner is getting treated. Brittney Griner, I'd argue, is getting a little bit of black privilege, or is getting black privilege, because of all of these cultural issues and the things that we are talking about in the United States of America. That's just a harsh reality. So guys, I'd like to see Brittney Griner come back home. I don't want to see anybody in jail, let alone in jail overseas in some country that isn't your own. But I hope that Brittney Griner learns some lessons. First off, I hope that she turns to God. I'll say that first and foremost. I hope that she turns to God. And I hope that she realizes the blessings, or how blessed she was to be an American. And how when she does return, whether it's 3 months, 9 months, a year, 9 years, she'll be grateful to call America home, realizing that she was privileged as a black woman to live in the United States of America. Guys, this podcast has gone surprisingly longer than I expected to. But again, I told you this would be the only podcast that you would need to listen to on Brittney Griner. This is an open and shut case, in my opinion. Right now, Brittney Griner should be asking for mercy. Her attorney should be asking for mercy, not justice. And until next time, guys, I appreciate you tuning in. Please, guys, be sure to subscribe to the podcast everywhere podcasts are found. Don't forget to rate and review the podcast. Please rate and review the podcast. SalemPodcastNetwork.com, TheCarlJacksonShow.com, wherever podcasts are found. Find me on social media, The Carl Jackson Show. Don't forget to put the word "the" in front. The Carl Jackson Show. Everywhere that I am on social media, you can find me there. And please don't forget to help out our friends at MyPillow.com. You can use the promo code Carl at MyPillow.com. Take advantage of whatever deals and specials they have going on right now. Take advantage of the Percale sheets that are nice for the hot summer months, but also they've got specials with new blankets that are out for the fall and winter. You can buy Christmas stuff now. Get the deals. Go to MyPillow.com, click on the radio listener square, type in the name Carl, C-A-R-L, and get yourself some gifts for Christmas. Get your family some gifts for Christmas. Get you some stuff that you'll enjoy. All right, guys, until next time, don't grow weary doing good, and God bless you.